Kennard from Duke University. Bang! Samaje Christian, 3.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode of the Triple Double Podcast. My name's Corey Albertson of Triple Double Prospects. We've got 270 Hoops, Jason Morrow in the building. 270 Hoops guys are getting ready to have their first event of the fall, their freshman event. So if you're in Columbus this weekend, coming up on, what is this going to be? Saturday the what?
25th.
Saturday the 25th. If you're in Columbus, make sure you check out 270 Hoops freshman event. Our guest today is someone we've been trying to get a hold of. He's had a busy schedule. We've had a busy schedule. We've got him today. One of my good friends, Coach Greg Paulus. GP, what's up?
How you doing, Corey, man? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we could work out a time that worked for everybody. And ever since you left Columbus, I just haven't had enough Greg Paulus in my life. So I'm glad we could set this up. But Greg Paulus, assistant coach at George Washington University. Prior to that, has been on staffs at Louisville, Ohio State, and Navy. And you probably know him from his career as a basketball player at Duke under Coach K from 2005 to 2009. Coach Paulus was a 3-time ACC champion. Is that the full rundown? Did I get everything important?
That's a good introduction right there. I appreciate it.
Short, sweet, hit the big things and everything. Also played a little football.
I was going to say the Syracuse fans are not going to be happy with you.
Syracuse, after Darius Baisley decommitted, we're not getting any Syracuse fans listening to this podcast, bud. Let me tell you that right now. So, why don't we start off with this, Coach? We're going to do a podcast about having somebody come on who's a former player and a big time player and how that impacted their career coaching. And we did that last week. We had Dante Jackson, who's now back at his alma mater of Xavier, on the podcast. So we're going to do some similar stuff here today. So first, everyone's starting to know you as a college coach. You're up and coming in this game, but people know you as a player who played at Duke. So give us the story of your career at Duke, some successful teams, and all that you learned from the legendary Coach K.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable experience, the chance to learn from one of the greatest coaches. I think when you're looking at what he's done to the other sports, a big part of why I wanted to go to Duke was my relationship with him, along with other things. But the chance to learn from him, to be a part of something so special and unique, the tradition, the academics, just chance to put on Duke across your chest was something that I'll never forget. It's with me every day, and something that I certainly don't take for granted to be a part of the brotherhood and all the special people that get a chance to work down there and have built the program to be what it is.
Right, and then Coach K, I love watching Duke. It's fun. Now the last, 5 years or so, the talent's been unbelievable there with the one and dones. I just caught today some of their highlights of the Zion Williamson kid from Canada, and the athleticism is ridiculous. You guys, when you played there, had less one and dones, but you had very similar success. Playing for Coach K, somebody who's so demanding, so detail-oriented, especially for you as a point guard, and having so many great point guards who went on to be college coaches before you. How much did his style really influence you now as a coach?
Well, I think it's laid an unbelievable foundation. You talked about some of the guys that have played for him, coached for him, with him. If you just look in the college game, and it's all over from the NBA to college. You look at Coach Bray, Coach Amaker, Coach Snyder with the Utah Jazz, Coach Dawkins. When I was there, my assistant coaches were Coach Dawkins, Chris Collins, Steve Wojciechowski. Those were some of the people that I had a chance to be around every day to learn from, and I was very fortunate. To have that type of expertise, they know that place, they love that place, and to learn from them and to be a part of that coaching tree. It's something that I take a lot of pride in. From when you think about what I take away from that experience is, it's the baseline for me as a human being. It was an unbelievable experience from, coming from my parents to having some great high school coaches to taking it another step further and becoming not only the coach that I'm still developing, but also the person, and the chance to learn under his leadership. It's second to none. And there's a reason for all of his success, and to be able to not only learn the game, but to take the standards of excellence, which is in all facets of the program, to take that with me and have that be a part of my daily routine and how I operate on a daily basis is something that I'll never forget. And I'm glad that I had the chance to learn from all those people, but to have a chance to experience it.
Top to bottom, having guys on the staff who have been in the program, something that Duke does, they're known for. I can't think of any other college programs that do it. I might be wrong. I don't think there are any high major Division ones, and it's just so hard because there's so few guys that have that tenure that he has. But when you look at that and guys have been there that long, there's got to be even higher level of expectations. You know, when you look at like Wojo, now the head coach at Marquette, I mean, he having been a great Duke point guard and you coming in and playing a lot right away, there had to be a lot of pressure on you. And I'm sure, I mean, they saw themselves in you, just like you're going to see some of yourself and some of the guards you coach. There had to be walking in and trying to play in the ACC. That's a tough battle. And I can imagine how difficult that was starting off at Duke.
It was certainly an adjustment. I think whenever, I know that when I went through it, you think you're ready, but you're not. Whether that's the physicality, whether that is the conditioning, whether that is the ability to bring it on a day-by-day basis. I was fortunate to learn from really good coaches and the players too. And I think sometimes the best way to learn is when you're getting challenged every day in practice and you're playing against the best, and you have to respond every single day when you're playing against Sean Dockery and JJ Redick, and you're playing with guys like Sheldon Williams, and those were the guys as a freshman that you're looking at the National Player of the Year, you're looking at All-Americans, and you think you know what it takes to get to that level. But as a freshman in the summer days and early in the fall when practice starts, you don't. And it takes a wave of inconsistency. It takes challenging every day from the expectations and the standards, competing for national championships, competing for ACC championships. And that is something that throughout my career I had different roles and responsibilities and different highs and lows. But the ability to be taught, to be coached, to learn from them certainly expedited the process. But I think some of that is you gotta go through it in order to learn, whether that may be practice or games. But the standard of excellence, it's not about the rules or doing this or that. It's about the way you conduct yourself from A to Z, and that goes from locker room to classroom to just the way you communicate. And there certainly was an adjustment period. And playing for those guys who were all point guards and guards, they knew what it takes. They knew that coach was going to be demanding and challenge and push you to a level that you didn't think you could reach. But every single time, coach pushes and finds a way, and he's just absolutely amazing at getting an individual to be at their best, but also bringing five guys together, identifying roles and making it a fist to make it the best team.
Absolutely. And then, looking then ahead, you decide you want to get into coaching. And when you decide you want to get into coaching, you've got, I think, one of the most interesting dynamics. And, Dante Jackson, so we had him on the podcast. We talked about some of this. Dante, all due respect, was a very, very good player. We talked about he won 107 games at Xavier. But he was known very much so in Southwest Ohio on Xavier teams that were good, but the program has even continued to ascend. With Duke, you being there, you guys competed for national championships. You were a three-time ACC champion. You were known on a national level. So when you decide to get into coaching, is there an advantage, disadvantage to being such a well-known former player, especially someone, and you see former players get into coaching who are a little older, maybe they played some pro ball or did something else, you kind of hopped right in. So what was that experience like?
Well, it was from a standpoint of getting into coaching, I always knew I wanted to coach. Even from when I was a teenager growing up, when I would sit with coaches and go through the recruiting process, and, Coach K would be sitting there and he'd say, well, what do you want to major in? And, I said, I want to coach. And so, I don't know how it happened, but it's just something I've always wanted to do. I love it. I'm passionate about it. And, it was something that it led up even before, from high school and college. And Coach is such a great teacher, and knowing that I was going to want to take all the things that I could learn from him. Notebooks were created from scouting reports and meetings, and all 4 of my years, I took notes from everything, experiences, the way Coach handled certain things, motivated, inspired. And so, I have those now. I reflect on them. It helps kind of go back in terms of centering myself and allowing me to see it from maybe a different lens, or maybe get a great idea or triggers a thought that allows me to reach players or team or just an idea for the staff. But getting into coaching was something that I always wanted to do. Getting a chance to start at the Naval Academy was certainly a terrific experience. I think that kind of my route started from, the ground up, learning to be an assistant coach, but yet at the same time do video with the Naval Academy for 1 year. You learn a lot about being a part of a greater mission, when you're recruiting kids and you're coaching kids that are serving the country for 5 years, after they get done with their 4 years of service, and they graduate. I think you're able to take your experiences wherever they may be, and you're learning the profession, you're learning the job, you're learning all the different intricacies and responsibilities within the program. And that was something that I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing, being able to go from there and learn from Coach Mata and taking the video coordinator position for 2 years at Ohio State. What a great way to learn all the different facets from one of the great coaches and terrific people, and to study not only how we did things, but you're able to watch so much film and learn from all the great Big Ten coaches and teams that you play, and another way to learn. And I think from there, you're able to, be an assistant coach at Ohio State for 4 years, an assistant at Louisville for a year, and now we're at George Washington. So the time goes by quickly, but I'm, from a standpoint of the progression and doing what I've always wanted to do, certainly been fortunate to work with some terrific people and learning every step of the way.
In developing this podcast, our idea here was to really come up with ways to educate the community, whether it's aspiring scouts, college coaches, players, high school coaches, et cetera, on different aspects of the basketball industry, how things really work in basketball. And you touched on one of the things I think is so interesting, which is as an assistant coach, especially as a young assistant coach, how do you handle the process of learning more about the coaching industry to further your career, but at the same time fulfill all your responsibilities as an assistant coach and do the most to help your head coach do his job? And those are really interesting points. And then having the network that you had of former Duke guys that players, coaches, that certainly lends itself to that experience. But then when you're getting in here and you're starting to coach, and maybe at the Naval Academy it's a little different. Guys who commit to that school have a vision that goes beyond basketball, beyond their playing career. But at these other schools, did it affect the way that kids looked at you, whether you're recruiting them, whether they're on the team when you arrive, knowing that you were a former player? Do you think that that's a different outlook than they have versus an assistant coach who maybe was a Division I player but probably isn't as known because he didn't play at as high-profile school as a Duke?
Well, I think that from a standpoint of the players, that you coach, that the players you're recruiting, some people know the whole story in terms of the Duke and the Syracuse and basketball, football. Some know, in some ways they're not Duke fans. Some ways it helps you because they are Duke fans, or they grew up getting a chance to watch you and watch your teams. I think it's important when you're looking to develop those relationships, whether it's recruiting or your own players, that hey, maybe the first impression might be a certain way, one way or the other. But I think it's really important to use that opportunity to develop that relationship. And I think that it starts with investing the time. They'll ask questions about playing at Duke or playing at this place, or they'll look on YouTube and they'll see certain plays, and parents will ask a lot of questions. But from a standpoint, I think each player, wants a few things. I think they want to get better. I think they want someone that cares about them, someone that believes in them, someone that is going to hold them accountable and challenge them to, just take another step forward in whatever area that may be. So to me, it's whether they know the story or not, it's important for me to dive right into them. It's important to get to know them as a person. And I think the best way to do that is off the court. I think it's important to be prepared every day, because if a player or recruit is asking questions and you're not creating a plan for them to get better, you're not helping them showing up every day with different ways to relate to them or to reach them, I think that they feel that, they know that, and it creates a distance, and we can't work together to get to where we can. So from a standpoint of that, to me, it's a great way to create a connection. I think it's a great way to stay involved in terms of being on the court. I love being on the court. I love demonstrating. I still like to play pickup, and I still like to jump in and show guys how to have technique, or still like to show guys jumping in drills and just saying, hey, I can do this, and I know what you guys are going through. And therefore, with all the different roles that I've played over years of being on a sports team, you're able to make that type of connection. You're able to communicate that. You're able to have that leadership of empathy, the empathy and leadership that you need to at different points, because as a coach and a leader, you need to you're going to have a different role depending on the situation, but that standard remains the same. So for me, I think it's great if they know the story, because we can create conversation and maybe they've seen what we've done in the coaching in terms of guys achieving their dreams and having 5 guys get drafted, or got other guys achieving dreams off the court. So hopefully it's an advantage, but to me it's more about once you're there, developing that trust, earning that trust within the relationship. And that to me is one of my favorite parts of coaching.
There's no substitute for being able to tell a kid you're coaching or recruiting that you've been there before, and for them to know 100% that you're telling the truth. And as someone who's coached AAU, who's done scouting, trying to, communicate with kids and families, and I was a marginal at best high school player. So I've gotten that a lot in my career, where people saying, well, were you really in this spot? And I said, no. I played high school basketball, was a manager at the college level, but didn't play beyond that. And you create a situation where you're not faking the funk. Everybody knows, you've played at that level, and to me that creates an advantage, and it's really a dynamic. And we're looking at dynamics of assistant coaches. We've had a lot of assistant coaches on the podcast lately. We talked with Aaron Foos from Chattanooga, who's in the Thad Matta coaching tree like you, came in as a manager. Dante Jackson came in as a player at his alma mater. You coming in as a guy who played college basketball and college football. Some of the different dynamics, I think, really make up a detailed look at what college coaching really is about and the different backgrounds people come to. So when you played at Duke, you're very known, as pretty much any Duke point guard is known. There's the Duke, there's the slapping the floor, there's the kind of extension of Coach K on the court. And when you get out here now and you're coaching, but more specifically, when you get out here now and you're recruiting, are you looking for guys, intangibly, characteristically that remind you some of yourself?
Well, I think it's important to understand the identity of the program. Understand making sure that everyone, staff understands the strengths and the things that we're looking for. Some of that may be, versatility. Some of that may be skill. Some want to recruit a certain way in terms of a skill set. So from a standpoint of looking at recruits, I think that there's certain things that you want to make sure align with the program and the vision of the program. Because if you have different pieces or you're kind of just grabbing out there without a plan, I think sometimes it becomes a little bit difficult to put it together. When you're working on, when they get to campus and you're looking at your roster, what do you need? What is important? And all that has changed over the years with grad transfers and transfers and the high school scene. So from a standpoint of looking, some of the traits, I think you're always looking for particular talent, but there's certain things that talent is not going to trump character. I think from a standpoint of those things that you're looking for, you want people that I love recruiting players that love the game and want to get better and have a work ethic to respond when things don't go well, because the reality is college basketball, it's a challenge. It's difficult. There's going to be a lot of highs. There's going to be a lot of lows, and you want to make sure that the resiliency with your team, the toughness, that mindset and that approach, the ability, hey, when things don't go well, you're not just going to shut it down, that you're going to work to find a way to fight, to continue to work through the situation, knowing that you have people behind you. So I do think that there's certain things that we look for, certain things that are common characteristics and traits of winning teams and having that championship standard. And I think that you're able to see that, whenever you turn it on and the confetti's coming down, and you can see the ability for teammates to love one another and sacrifice and be tough and be there for one another. And I think you can see all those things, or you're trying to see those things, I should say, when you're looking at a kid and when you're trying to identify if they're a good fit for your program, because there's a lot of talent out there, and finding the ones that fit your program, which is what I started with, and want to be at the place. You want to have someone that wants to be at your school. It certainly makes for, from my experience, a better experience.
Absolutely. And you've been through it on both sides, because when you were 17, 18, you had to decide what system program fits what I want. So now you're in the business of helping teenagers and their families identify, does our style right now as George Washington emulate what you guys are looking for in a program? So let's shift gears a little bit here. I wanted to talk about, like I told you, we've been talking about moving up in college coaching, using connections, using just roll up your sleeves, kind of stick-to-itiveness. You had a quick rise into this game, getting on with Ohio State, leveraging off your playing career, a lot of hard work. And then there was a change in staff at Ohio State. And since then, you've really had an up and down experience in getting back to getting in a great gig like you are heading into next year or your first year at George Washington. But just describe that in-between period, what you did and how you really just built so many connections in the coaching world or scouting world, basically basketball world, in that time.
Well, it's certainly, every opportunity that I've had a chance to be a part of, I've learned so much. I've tried to make it better than it was, in whatever capacity or role that may be. But the opportunity to be a part of Louisville last year, there was 5-6 months there after the change was made at Ohio State. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to use that opportunity, not knowing when something may or may not come out, because I believe it was in June. And so looking for that next opportunity, it was important for me to put together a plan and an action plan in order to try to position myself to, one, continue to grow and learn, two, to try to get the next opportunity and to try to find the right fit for me in terms of that next opportunity. So I tried to use it as a coaching sabbatical, however long it was going to be, whether it was a couple weeks, a couple months. And I just wanted to be anywhere and everywhere. I saw over 50 programs from high school, college, NBA, that included practices, that included games, that included driving to different clinics, working out some of the best players over the next few classes in different states throughout the country. The same way that you recruited players, you're recruiting for yourself for an opportunity. And I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I had the flexibility to work out with players. I had a chance to work out with high schools, work out with AAU programs, to continue to get better at my craft, to continue to better relationships, but also to make others better. And if I had a chance to have that type of impact, that was going to be good. So when the opportunity came in July, I made sure that I drove to all the recruiting events, from the Northeast to the Southeast to the Midwest. I wanted to make sure that I could continue to do my job from a standpoint of evaluating players of all levels, because I didn't know where my next opportunity would be. So I drove to tournaments that college coaches couldn't be at, so I could evaluate players to try to create some value, to try and, hey, if an opportunity did come, I would know who I was recruiting. I would already have a relationship. I would know a lot about them. I would know if it would be a good fit. And so I did that June, July, August, September, October. And, it was something that the coaching sabbatical of, getting a chance to watch NBA teams in film sessions and practices, getting a chance to watch other college programs, a lot of Big Ten programs, schools that I used to recruit against. I had a chance to see them, and I had a chance to see from all different levels out of all the Division I teams. And so for me, it was an unbelievable opportunity, and I learned more about myself. I learned about how much I love what I do. I continue to get better. And now when I come back, not only do I use the Duke experience or the Syracuse football, I have a chance to reflect back on my Navy, my Ohio State, and 50-plus practices, Louisville experience, where I can, hey, I really like this drill. Hey, they did this to improve their culture. Hey, they communicate this in a different way. And I brought my notebook with me, just like I did from when I was 18 years old, wanting to be a coach. And I just started to continue to take notes on everything. And I spent time with a lot of people. I spent time with people that were really successful. I spent time with people that were not as successful. And I tried to pick their brains and learn, hey, what would you do differently? If this situation comes up, or why do you think this may happen? And for someone that's been doing this for 10 years, and there's been a lot of experience in the 10 years, you don't get a chance to study other programs in depth and sit in their film sessions and sit in staff meetings. And I'm really grateful that the other coaches within the profession open their doors, open their houses to let me just be a part of them and shadow them for days at a time. And it was certainly something that I learned a bunch. I take it with me. And I think it will make me a better person and a better coach moving forward.
Anytime that you can just go back to the basics, it can be in basketball, it can be anything in life. There's something so therapeutic about that, I think. And I've had several instances as I've kind of moved up in my professional life outside of basketball, where I've had frustrating, long, stressful days, and then after that day go and, whether it's an AAU practice, a high school game, depending on the time of year, whatever, you go and you watch some basketball and you look at the basics, you look at kind of the purity of it as you step away from looking at it as a career and look at it as just, something that's a tool to have fun. And it can just be so therapeutic. And that's why you talked about it earlier in terms of just looking for guys that love the game. And with the two things that we've really seen as universal themes and interviewing a lot of college coaches on this podcast, I think number one is you guys want guys who love the game of basketball, and vice versa. That's the way that you guys are able to have success in moving up in the basketball world, and that you're willing to do things in the short term that are going to reflect in the long term in your career as you move up in coaching. And then the second one of those you also alluded to, which is the ability to make connections. And basketball is the tool, but it's at the end of the day, this is a people business, and basketball is just one of the tools within that people business. And that's applicable for so many. I work a lot in sales, and that's very applicable for my life as well. Looking at your process that you went through, and looking for a gig, going to Louisville, knowing that Louisville was going to be a short-term thing because of kind of the problems from the previous staff before that, and you guys did a great job in the little bit of time you had. It reminds me of an article I saw in February in Sports Illustrated. I don't know if you saw it. It was now I'm blanking. I don't know if Tom Crean wrote it or if it was about Tom Crean, but it was about his year off between Indiana and now he just got hired at Georgia. And he visited baseball managers. He visited Bill Belichick. He visited his brother-in-law coaching football. He visited all types of college basketball, all types of NBA. I think he even met with some individual sport athletes and just tried to apply every little thing into how they conduct a meeting, how they do a film session, how they do this and that, into making himself a better coach. And again, kind of going back to the basics. And that's what I respect about what you did, is that, in your year off, you didn't sit back and feel sorry for yourself. You came out. You watched my team with the Cincinnati Lakers. You came down to Louisville, and you took advantage of something that everybody in the gym wishes they could do. And you, as you were looking for a gig, could take advantage of, which is you could actually talk to the kids, unlike the guys who are currently on the staff. You went and visited AAU practices. You did all that stuff. And we talked to Dante Jackson. He was in the same situation after Northern Kentucky made a change, and he did everything he could. But at the same time, he was working at the Nike outlet to make sure he still had money. And the perseverance thing really kind of goes all the way back to what you talked about at the beginning, which is lessons learned from your parents, but also from Coach K.
Yeah, I think, the game is an amazing vehicle to learn about yourself. Obviously you have experiences and you get to have some really unique opportunities, playing and coaching and impacting so many lives, which I love. But it gives you a chance to learn about yourself. And sometimes just taking that step back and you get a chance to really look at yourself and say, am I doing this to the best? Or, hey, how can I learn to adapt? The game has changed, in terms of just even 10 years ago, in terms of, hey, how can I become a better teacher? How can I become a better leader? What else can I do outside? And I did read that article. I thought it was terrific. And I actually talked to Coach Crean several times throughout it. We sat down for a few hours and talked about different things that we learned and how we're trying to take a little bit, not only from our experiences, but whether it's reading books or meeting with CEOs and leaders of companies, and how can we get better at our craft to ultimately prepare yourself for when that next opportunity does come. And it's something that it reminds me of a quote, and I love this quote. It's J.J. Redick said this one. He said, "You've never arrived, you are always becoming." And I think that can apply to so many different avenues and aspects of life, that if you can have an opportunity to step back and see it from a different lens and have a different perspective and, take time for yourself to invest in yourself and really be honest with yourself, you're going to have a heck of an opportunity to not only see what other people do, but how that applies to who you are as a person, as a leader, as a coach. And then moving forward, how can you positively impact those in the next opportunity you will get? So hopefully we can do that here at George Washington. Was
that a quote from like bearded, tatted up J.J. Redick, or was that clean cut Duke J.J. Redick?
That was, you know what, he was, I love to study other teams. You know, I know you talked about the article in Sports Illustrated, but whether it's reading books or studying how people are, running their program or developing their culture or creating new ways to communicate, how they're communicating. And that was something that I know when he came back to speak to one of the Duke teams a few years after he was in the NBA. And he said that to the guys. And, just to try to read as much as I can and learn. It's amazing how much is on that. It's on Twitter, it's on social media, it's out there on YouTube. It's so the access to it, you can really spend as much time on that stuff, and it really helps develop who you are, what you want to be a part of, and then moving forward, what can you do for others, which is ultimately what we're trying to do.
The other thing you do in that kind of reflecting and bettering yourself is you do what I call finding your recruiting voice. And as someone who deals with college coaches on a daily basis, young and experienced, there's such a difference, I can tell you, in hearing a pitch, even just talking about guys who they might recruit. There's such a difference in guys who've been in it a long time, the way they talk, they have their own style, they have their way they look at the game. They're not just regurgitating what the head coach says. They're not just regurgitating cliches. And you really further that, especially by making connections with different people. You've got to go out there. You've got to show personality. You've got to be memorable, because as you're looking for a job, obviously your ability to be memorable in that connection with that person, even if it's just for a short time, is going to give you a better chance to open up more doors. And then the other thing you do, no, go ahead.
No, you got it, Corey.
No, so the other thing you do, I was going to give you a more technical basketball one, which is, the final piece to that puzzle, I think, in talking to you this past May at Speech Running Slam in Fort Wayne, is having been at Ohio State and Louisville. I know you've done other spots before. You were at Navy, which is a little different level, but you weren't an assistant coach. Having played at Duke, you've been around a lot of the super high major, elite talent guys. Now at George Washington, you're looking for a slightly different type of player, maybe somebody under the radar. And I remember talking to you in Fort Wayne, and you told me, you're like, I'm looking for guys who would be good low major players, good mid major players, and good high major players, because I don't know, where my next gig will be right now. I've got some leads. I don't know what it's going to be. And that's kind of another example of just trying to take different opportunities and better yourself to prepare for that next step.
Yeah, and I think it's when you talked about the relationship aspect of it, and it's such a big piece. In coaching and in society, relationships are such a big focal point, and it's about others. It's about having the ability to connect and communicate and bring people together for a cause that's greater than you. And from a standpoint of the relationships, it's like you talked about being memorable and having that type of impact, but I think it's important to follow up. And I think it's important to try to create a value, or how can you provide, in recruiting, or whether it's just maybe it's spending time with other coaches. But it's certainly, there's an opportunity with everyone, because everyone has a story. Everyone has gotten to a certain point for a certain reason. And I love just picking brains and having an opportunity to ask, hey, how did you develop this? Why are you the way you are? You know what I mean? And I think that.
Well, let me cut in there real quick. And you touched on something that's funny. I had written this down. It's on my notebook here on my laptop, of just, when I hear something that I like or see something on Twitter that I like, I put it in a notebook just for stuff to ask people about on podcasts as we kind of grow with this. And one of them was, my favorite podcast is called The Church of What's Happening Now. It's by a comedian named Joey Diaz, and they talk about all types of crazy crap. But what he talks about as a comedian, as someone who's really become successful, is just his understanding of how to deal with people. And one of those things is checking in with people. And he's big on just, calling somebody, not calling them and say, hey, I need you to help me try and get this movie role. Just, hey, how are you doing? And there's a trend in college basketball. I can tell you 9 out of 10 times when somebody calls my phone as a college coach, I can tell you if they want something or not. And that's, I think, is exactly what you alluded to, is for people who are young coaches, the ability to meet somebody is only relevant to a small degree. The ability to create that lasting connection, to be memorable, but then to follow up and check in with that person, that's where you're really going to make the wavelengths, especially as you want to become a better and better recruiter. And if you want to move up in college coaching, you better become a better and better recruiter as you get older.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, if you look at in all the different aspects and parts of a program and being on a team, that communication, that relationship, that ability to make the effort and to kind of you want to make sure that you're doing a great job of what you're doing and letting everything unfold. But there certainly is a part of you as well that you want to make sure that you invest in yourself a little bit. You want to continue to learn and grow. And I love going on the recruiting trail and having a chance to learn from high school coaches. And I mean, there's, whether you played or you didn't play, there's so many good teachers, so many good coaches, so many good people that you have a chance to interact with, because this game is global and it's, there's an opportunity. It's just a matter of recognizing it, but then making the effort. And I'm fortunate. I come from a big family. I got 6 brothers and sisters. The relationship aspect of coaching and watching others develop or grow or take one step, you're helping them because you know it's going to help them in life. And that is one of my favorite parts about being a coach and having that chance. So when you can hear other people's stories, not only are you learning yourself, but you also have a chance to learn from them. But then again, you can share that to other people. And it's such a small fraternity, the basketball coaching, that, it's not often that, you and I got a friend together, Corey, and then we got a mutual friend, and then we're all grabbing lunch a couple months later and staying in touch. So it's certainly, something just to be cognizant of as one goes through the process of doing their job really well and continuing to try to grow from an individual standpoint.
And I learned the most things when I'm least expecting to learn them. So if when I'm coaching AAU and it's AAU, practice time is limited, so you don't have a ton of technical basketball time to work on stuff. At least I don't in the situation I coach in. But what I learn is, if I'm out there on the internet or looking through old notebooks of stuff I've got from Cincinnati practices or watching Xavier practices under Coach Mack, I can find stuff I'm looking for in terms of, well, this would be a good out of bounds play, this would be a good drill to incorporate. But more often than not, I find that stuff when I'm not looking for it. If I go to practice at a high school and I'm like, oh, they did a really interesting warm-up drill, but I'm not even there for that. I'm there to watch a kid, but that's what I learned. Stuff like that. The other day I was flipping through some YouTube stuff late at night, and I stumbled upon a video excerpt of 3 or 4 minutes of CJ McCollum's new podcast. He had Kevin Durant on, and they weren't talking scouting, but they were just talking about different really good NBA players and what they liked about those guys' games, and some of the terminology and things they were talking about that they thought made those players good was so applicable to scouting that I saved that video and watched it again and took some notes off that. And that's the whole idea here of keeping your eyes open, and you can really move up in the coaching ladder. So, well, that's great. But I think that's just about all the time we have. I don't want to let you get any more good quotes in, because then your episode might get more downloads than Chaz Wolf's.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can come back and do this soon, Corey.
That'd be great. So again, guys, that was former Duke point guard, current George Washington assistant, Greg Paulus. For Jason Morrow of 270 Hoops, my name is Corey Albertson of Triple Double Prospects. Thanks for listening to the Triple Double Podcast. GP, I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.